My mother was a prostitute. My father was a pimp. I bet I got your attention now. And I remember at the age of 12, when I went home and I had my own little recipe. You know, I had my own little medicine. You know, I would put my headphones on, I would put music on, and I would block everything out. And the music that I would listen to was this hip-hop music. And I would listen to this music and I would memorize the words of the music, and I would just shut myself in the bedroom and listen to this music. And what I used for a getaway, what I used for a refuge, at the time I didn't realize it was a cancer that was killing me. It was warping my mentality. It fed my anger. It fed my frustration. It fed my confusion. It fed all the things that would later come out in my actions. And those actions would produce things called consequences. And I remember I would put this music on and I would listen to this music, and the music, pretty much all it talked about was, you know, how much weed you smoked and how much money you had and what cars you drove and what jewelry that you wore. And where I lived in my community, that's all I saw. Everywhere I looked, I could see a drug spot. I grew up in Great Valley Projects. It's the largest projects in Massachusetts. And it was the worst one too at that time. And everywhere you looked in Great Valley Projects, you could see what they called the punto. A point, a spot, a drug spot. Everywhere you looked, that spot sold weed, and that spot sold crack, and that spot sold coke, and that spot sold heroin. Everywhere you looked, you could see a drug spot. And I remember listening to this music and thinking that, you know, in order to be a man or in order to be successful, you know, I had to carry a gun, and I had to have jewelry, and I had to be sleeping with mad women, and I had to have money, and I had to have cars, and these are the things I grew up listening to, and my community, my environment supported it. I grew up around drug dealers and pimps and hoes. Like I said, my mother was a prostitute. My father was a pimp. But the destruction was in my immediate environment. Matter of fact, I remember a situation where my father had got out of prison and they put him on parole, but they messed up. And they gave him a female parole officer, and he was a pimp, and he had the gift of gab, and he could speak and manipulate. Before you knew it, he was sleeping with his parole officer, pimping his parole officer, and turned around and shot a man with his parole officer's gun. And her father was a judge. And this was all over the news. And I remember being a little boy and watching a newspaper clip. My dad was on the front page. And it wasn't for doing nothing good. It wasn't for doing anything special. It wasn't for being heroic. In fact, there were about 10 officers standing there while my dad was laying on the ground. 10 officers posing for a newspaper clip with their foot on my father. That's what I remember as a young man. My environment was different. My immediate environment was different. My father's sister shot and murdered a man and did time in prison for it. My older brother had murdered 2 people, did time in prison for it. My brother, who was 2 years older than me, shot a man when he was 17 years old. He shot a man 7 times in his chest, in his neck, all of that, and went away to prison for 10 to 15 years when he was 17 years old. Later on, they were charging me with attempted murder for shooting somebody. I was 22 years old when I got raided by the feds. One of the first CPAC units to ever exist. FBI, ATF, U.S. Marshals, DEA caught me with a half a kilo of cocaine, ecstasy, amitriptyline, a gun, and over 300 rounds of ammunition. They put it in the news saying, oh, he's like a low drug lord and all this other stuff. I was 22 years old. They were telling me they were going to send me away for 20 to 30 years. I ended up getting a 15-year sentence out of that. But let's go back to the story. As I was 15 years old, and I used to listen to this music, and then the music, I also used to watch the movies, you know, the mafia movies, you know what I'm saying? And this is the way things are done, and this is the way you handle things, this is the way you inflict fear, and this is the way you take control, and this is the way, in that anger from the abuse, as I spent my entire childhood going in and out of, back then they used to call it DSS. Now they call it DCF. I used to go in and out of DSS foster homes and in and out of DYS lockup facilities. And I started going to jail as soon as I was old enough to go at the age of 17. And before you knew it, I was 22 years old and got sent away to 15 years in prison, a minimum mandatory sentence, which meant that I could not receive good time. I could not get parole. I had to do 15 years, day for day. I'll get to that part of the story in a second. So I'm 15 years old, and I'm being inspired by this rap music. This rap music, it told me, told my whole community, told people all across the world. It wasn't just me. There were people in Russia and China doing the same, wearing baggy jeans and wearing their pants. Back then it was baggy jeans. Now they're wearing tight jeans. I don't know what's going on. But at the end of the day, it wasn't just me. They were telling it to the whole world. And young kids were buying it. Young kids were believing that these rappers who were saying the things that they're saying, we were believing that that was the life that they were really living. And some of them maybe possibly were living a fraction of what the things they were actually saying. But me, I wanted to be better than them all. I wanted to be badder than them all. I'm believing the stuff I'm hearing as if they're really living it. And then I'm going and walking it out, suffering the consequences myself. 15 years old, I remember my first gun charge. And I was with some older folks, and I was drinking, and I had told myself at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, we was on our way to the store with 2 other gentlemen. I was about 15, the other one was about 16, 17, maybe the other one was about 18. And I told myself, I said, I'm gonna rob everybody who I see on the way to the store. The only problem is, at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning in the hood, the only people are out are drug dealers and gangbangers. So if you're going to rob somebody, you might get something back. And so on our way to the store, we're walking about 1/3 of the way. I seen some dudes, stick it up. Let me get that. Robbed them. Seen another group of individuals, stick them up. Robbed them. Got to the third group of individuals. They were older cats. Stuck them up too. Went to the store. While I was in the store, somebody called the police on me. I thank God for that day, because I believe that that was supposed to be the day I was supposed to die. Somebody called the police. Police show up at the store. Come immediately to me. They grab me. They find crack cocaine in my back pocket and a .38 Smith & Wesson Special on me. I was 15 years old. My other 2 friends that was with me, they had nothing on them. They let them go. My 2 friends, now they're on their way back walking. They have to cut through that same projects to get to the end of the projects where they live. And who's there? That last group of gentlemen, those older men with guns, shotguns, boom, boom. They take off running. I hear about it. But the crazy thing is I was so drunk that night, so drunk, that I know myself. They would have started shooting. I would have started shooting back. So drunk, I would probably been so drunk, I couldn't run, trip and fall, and get my brains blown out. Who knows? Those 2 of my friends, they got away. I got away too, in the back of a paddy wagon. 15 years old, my first gun charge. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and share with someone who you think may either be able to relate to the video and or get something out of it. Click the link to the right for the full video. Stay blessed, and remember, no excuses.